Hey guys, welcome back to Based MMA. UFC 301 is a wrap. It was such a fun card. It's unfortunate that the main event just left a bad taste in my mouth, but it is what it is. I'm going to be talking about the whole card, and I'm going to start off with the main event. Well, actually, I'm just going to start off by saying how well I actually did on this card. I went 10 and 14. I was doing so well in the prelims. I do not know why I picked Jack Shore to beat Brito. I should have gone with Brito. I was doing so well on the card. Then Jack Shore lost, and then I picked Vitor Petrino. I think that was a shocker of the night. The fact that Anthony Smith got the guillotine and won that fight. He was such a big underdog going into that fight. And then I'm more disappointed in the fact that I picked Jonathan Martinez to beat Jose Aldo. I should have just stuck with Jose Aldo. That's who I was initially picking. But, this week I was like, you know what? But Jonathan Martinez is the younger fighter. He's on a 6-5 win streak. Jose Aldo's coming off the Murrah fight. He might be a little bit older, a little bit slower. I know he's been boxing in his time away from the UFC. But I just thought Jonathan Martinez, some way, somehow, was going to get it done. But I knew that Jose Aldo had the better boxing. I knew that he had amazing leg kick defense. And I don't know why I changed my pick to Jonathan Martinez. I felt like such a moron. After changing my pick to Jonathan Martinez. But overall, I did pretty well on the card. Obviously, I picked Steve Erceg. So let's start off with that main event. The main event was a very, very, very competitive fight. Like I predicted, I told you guys, look, I think a lot of people thought I picked Steve Erceg just because of the meme, just because it was bedtime MMA and I wanted to support the MMA YouTube community. But no, guys, I actually picked Steve Erceg because I think he's a very well-rounded fighter. I think he showed that last night. I thought, look, his boxing, his outside striking, he has good enough grappling, in my opinion, to at least stuff a couple of the takedowns or at least get up to his feet where Alexandre Pantoja is not going to be able to control him for a significant portion of the rounds. And that's kind of what happened. However, I am of the same mindset that I think Steve Erceg got robbed. I do think he got robbed. And initially, as I was watching the fight live, I thought Steve Erceg threw the fight. I thought he threw the fight when he shot for a takedown in the fifth round when 1 minute and a half to go. And Alexandre Pantoja was able to reverse the scramble, the takedown. And then Alexandre Pantoja was on top, landing elbows, landing actually strikes. So it wasn't like Alexandre Pantoja was just controlling him on the ground and absolutely doing no damage. No, Alexandre Pantoja was actually landing stuff when he was on top position over Steve Erceg in that fifth round. So I was like, why did you shoot for a takedown, Steve Erceg? I was super frustrated. I was mad because I thought, look, the fight could be 2-2 going into the fifth. You're winning in the striking. Why would you shoot for a takedown? Why would he shoot for a takedown? And I think the reason why Steve Erceg shot for a takedown is because he thought he needed a finish and he was trying to get a submission over Alexandre Pantoja, probably because his corner was telling him that he was 3 rounds down. And that was so dumb, man. I think that's why Steve Erceg lost. And I'm going to be honest, even with that fifth round mistake from Steve Erceg, I still think you could make a solid argument he won the fight. I gave him the second round. I thought the third round was very competitive. I gave him the fourth round. I think the third round, you kind of give it to Steve Erceg. It was a very competitive round. I'm not going to be mad if you give the third round to Alexandre Pantoja. It was a very close fight. But even with that, I think you could have given the fight to Steve Erceg. So I was very surprised by the scorecards. Now, with all that being said, now that I've looked at the judges' scorecards and we see that two of the judges scored, two of the judges had the fight 2-2 going into the fifth, and then the fifth round they gave it to Alexandre Pantoja. So that just proves my point even more that I do believe that Steve Erceg made a big mistake in that fifth round by doing that. He should have kept the fight on the feet. He was landing the better strikes. He was, the cleaner fighter on the feet. And that's not to say that Alexandre Pantoja just had nothing on the feet and he was just getting schooled. No, Alexandre Pantoja was still fighting very good. He was landing good low kicks, landing that right hand. So it wasn't like Alexandre Pantoja was just getting outclassed on the feet, but you could tell that Steve Erceg was just the cleaner striker on the feet and that he was having a lot more success on the feet. Now, Alexandre Pantoja, he would just eat the shots. Like every time that Steve Erceg would land like a left hook and then a right hand, Alexandre Pantoja would just walk through it and then level change and shoot for a takedown. It was so impressive how, I guess, amazing of a chin Alexandre Pantoja has. I know that Steve Erceg isn't necessarily known for his power, but because the shots were landing so clean, you would think they would have a greater effect on Pantoja, but they really weren't. Like Pantoja was able to walk through a lot of Steve Erceg's shots, but like I said, I think Steve Erceg won the fight, man. I really do believe that he proved he was the better fighter. And like I told you guys in my prediction, I thought, look, even if Steve Erceg loses this fight, it's going to be such a competitive fight that people are going to say, man, Steve Erceg is really that good. I did not expect it to be a robbery, if I'm being honest. I thought, okay, maybe Alexander Pantoja just wins with the control time. Maybe Steve Erceg makes a lot of mistakes, and I was kind of right in the sense that he did make a big mistake in that fifth round, in my opinion. He made a big mistake, and I think he should have known. I don't know what his corner was seeing for them to be so confident that Alexander Pantoja was 3 rounds up. I do not know what they were watching. I thought it was very competitive. Look, I know Alexander Pantoja would maybe take him down at the end of the round and then control him, and then the round would end. And I don't know if they thought, look, maybe the way the rounds are ending is not a good look for Steve Erceg, so therefore the judges are giving the round to Alexander Pantoja. I don't know if that was the logic or the rationale behind Steve Erceg's corner telling him that he was 3 rounds down, because that was so dumb, man. It was a very competitive fight. Maybe because they were in Brazil, they thought, it's going to be very hard. A lot of these close rounds are going to give him to Alexander Pantoja because they're in Brazil. He's the champion. But man, Steve Erceg, if he would have just kept the fight on the feet, 2 of those judges would have given the round to Steve Erceg, because I really do believe that Steve Erceg would have landed the better shots on the feet. There was only a minute and a half left on the round. Why did he shoot for a takedown? That's what frustrated me the most. The fact that Steve Erceg really had this fight in the bag. And like I told you guys, I didn't just pick Steve Erceg just because of the meme, just because of the bedtime. Like, I actually went back to watch Steve Erceg, and I realized how skilled he actually is and how well-rounded he is, how good of a boxing he has. I know he only has 3 fights in the UFC, and maybe he doesn't have a lot of experience in a lot of these big fights, but he showed that he's a top flyweight. In my opinion, I think he's the only guy potentially right now in the division who could beat Alexander Pantoja, and I would love for them to run it back. I understand that they're probably not going to do that because Steve Erceg is ranked number 10. But man, that was such a close fight. That was such a close fight. And I think you could make a solid argument for the fight being 4-1 Steve Erceg more than you can make a solid argument for the fight being 4-1 Alexander Pantoja. So I could kind of see, if you don't understand the rules, why you would give Pantoja 4 rounds to 1. I could kind of see that if you count control time, if you count all these little stuff that doesn't really matter, because it's all about damage and effective striking and effective grappling as well. And Alexander Pantoja, it's not like he was close to getting a submission. And it's not, look, I think in the 5th round, he was actually landing shots when he was on top of Steve Erceg, which that does count. That does count. We have to give credit to Alexander Pantoja. But in my opinion, it was clear that Steve Erceg was a better fighter. I thought he won at least 3 rounds to 2. I thought if he wouldn't have made the mistake in that 5th round, you could have made a solid argument for Steve Erceg winning 4-1. In my opinion, you could make a solid argument for that, but he made a big mistake. It is what it is. I think he'll be back, man. I think he'll be back. Obviously, this stinks, man, because I picked Steve Erceg. I was really confident on my Steve Erceg pick. I just thought, you know what, stylistically, he could be a bad matchup for Alexander Pantoja. And I thought actually that at the beginning of the fight was when Steve Erceg was gonna have a lot of problems, because we know Pantoja starts off very fast, very high pace, very aggressive on the feet, and then shoots for a takedown. And if Steve Erceg is not prepared, then I thought he was gonna get overwhelmed at the beginning of the fight. The one thing I will say, I should have brought this up before I even started to talk about this fight. I did not buy this pay-per-view. I was streaming the pay-per-view, and in the first round, the stream started lagging. So I watched like the first minute of the first round, and then I watched like the last 40 seconds of the first round, because I had to turn it off and restart it. So I truly did not get a good grasp of what happened in that first round. A lot of people said that Pantoja won that round, so I'm just gonna take their word for it and just assume that yes, Alexander Pantoja won the first round. But I was streaming it. I did not want to buy this pay-per-view. It was not a pay-per-view that was worth $85 in my opinion. But like, I did not watch the first round, so I just kind of wanted to bring that up in case I wanted to be transparent in the fact that I did not watch the first round. I don't know if it went to Steve Erceg. I don't know if it was a very close round. People said that it was a clear round for Pantoja. So I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt that it was actually a clear round for Pantoja. But still, a very competitive fight, high level fight. Like I told you guys, Steve Erceg was a live underdog. A lot of people thought, oh, MMA YouTubers are just picking Steve Erceg because of the meme, because they want to pick an underdog. No, guys, we were picking Steve Erceg because we knew he was this good. We knew he was this high level. We knew he had potential to pull the upset. And in a way, even though he lost this fight, he proved to the world that he belongs. He proved to the world that, he potentially did beat Alexandre Pantoja. Now, I don't agree with the judges' scorecards. I think they need to do a better job of clarifying the rule set to these judges, and actually for them to explain, like, why did you pick Pantoja in this round? What did you see? What did you count more? You know, even though it was a robbery, just because it was a robbery doesn't mean that the fight wasn't competitive. It doesn't mean that the fight wasn't close. Pantoja was doing a lot on the feet as well. He was landing low kicks, landing his right hand, landing some shots as well. It wasn't like he was just getting clearly outclassed on the feet. You know what I'm saying? It was a very, very competitive fight. But in my opinion, just because it was a very competitive fight doesn't mean that there wasn't a clear winner. And in my opinion, that was Steve Erceg. Was Jonathan Martinez versus Jose Aldo. Man, Jose Aldo looked amazing, man. He looked amazing. Maybe this time off, just, fighting and boxing did him wonders because his boxing looked amazing. Jonathan Martinez just couldn't get anything going with his hands. He was throwing his leg kicks, but Jose Aldo was blocking them. So Jonathan Martinez was basically, he had nothing on the feet for Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo was landing that left hook to the body, right hand over the top. And Jose Aldo just looked like the faster, more experienced fighter on the feet. And Jonathan Martinez just looked frustrated out there. He really did look frustrated out there. I thought he was going to do a little bit better. He was a little bit gun shy. I don't know if he respected Jose Aldo a bit too much, but I don't think it was necessarily that Jonathan Martinez was respecting Jose Aldo a bit too much. I think it had to do more with how fast and how crisp Jose Aldo's boxing was in comparison to his hands. You know what I'm saying? So great win by Jose Aldo. I hope he stays around. I know people were saying that he should fight Sean O'Malley. Absolutely not, bro. Sean O'Malley needs to fight Marab. That's the fight that needs to happen next. I would like to see Jose Aldo maybe against like a Peter Yan, Henry Cejudo. I mean, I think he beats Henry Cejudo right now. I think that would be an interesting fight. They were supposed to fight back in 2020. Jose Aldo versus Henry Cejudo. I think it could be a very interesting fight. I would like to see that fight. But yeah, great performance by Jose Aldo. I'm still mad at myself for picking Jonathan Martinez. When I was feeling Jose Aldo the whole week, I was like, no, he has the better boxing. He's going to be able to block the leg kicks. Jonathan Martinez, the way he wins fights is with his leg kicks, which nasty low kicks, nasty body kicks. And Jose Aldo is so great at neutralizing those low kicks and leg kicks. So I should have stuck with Jose Aldo. Bad pick for me there. So I got wrong the main and co-main event. So obviously it hurts, even though I did very good on the card. I wish I would have gotten the main event and the co-main event right. So now the next fight was Anthony Smith versus Vitor Petrino. Vitor Petrino was winning on the feet, man. Shoots for a takedown. And Anthony Smith is able to get the guillotine. And that's it. That's basically the fight, man. It's one of those things where you really can't predict something like that to happen. It's just like, okay, sometimes you need a fight on the card to remind you that anything could really happen in MMA. And that was the fight, the Anthony Smith versus Vitor Petrino. I picked Vitor Petrino. Anthony Smith looked like he didn't work out. He didn't have any abs. He looked like a bag of milk. And Vitor Petrino, I mean, he was on an 11 win streak. He had never lost. He was undefeated. I thought he was going to beat Anthony Smith, but he shot for a takedown. Anthony Smith was able to get the guillotine. It was a pretty tight guillotine. And that's basically it. I mean, on paper, Anthony Smith might beat Alex Pereira, man. I mean, credit to him. I know he was kind of the meme, but that was a weird fight. That was a weird fight in my opinion. I was kind of disappointed on Petrino to be able to get subbed like that by Anthony Smith. It was whatever, man. Now the next fight was Michel Pereira versus Igor Poterya. Michel Pereira looks amazing in the middleweight division. He looks so strong. He looks so fast. He landed like this jab, this left hand that dropped Igor Poterya. And then he did a backflip into side control. And then Igor Poterya got up and then he was able to get the submission. It was just incredible performance by Pereira. And they need to give him a step up in competition because he's looked incredible in the middleweight division. Great performance by him. And then Paul Craig versus Barajo. Barajo just knocked him out. I mean, Paul Craig had nothing on the feet. He looked like a slow man on the feet. I mean, we know this guy doesn't have amazing hands. And Barajo was able to get the knockout. I think that's kind of what we expected. Look, if Paul Craig isn't able to get the fight to the ground, and even if he's able to get the fight to the ground, it's not like Barajo doesn't have a ground game. So I think that was a very clear pick with Barajo, was able to get the knockout. It was a nasty knockout, man. Like Paul Craig folded. Nasty, nasty knockout, guys. But that is just my take on the main card. Great fights all around. Like I said, I should have gone with Brito. I picked Lucindo. I went with Orobai. Very competitive fight. That was a really, really fun fight. I went with Drakkar Close. I picked Drakkar Close. I picked Rufi, Barboza, Bonfim, and Costa. And so I did pretty well on the prelims. I got 3 of the fights wrong on the main card, which was the last 3 fights, which was the Erceg fight, the Martinez fight, and the Smith fight. The Smith one, okay, I'm not too mad about, because that was such a like crazy win from Anthony Smith. It was such a random win. I'm mad about the Martinez one, and I'm mad about the Erceg one, because I thought Erceg had done enough to win the fight. But let me know your thoughts on the card. Did you have fun with this card? What would you rate the card? I thought it was a pretty fun card. Look, it wasn't like the best, most amazing stat card ever, but you know, when you have a lot of Brazilians on this card, typically the fights deliver, and typically they're very fun fighters besides Alexandre Pantoja.